Hi, welcome to another video. In this one, I want to talk about some of the books that I have been reading in quarantine, because I'm sure I'm not the only one who's bored out of my mind every single day. It's already been like the third month of quarantine. I don't think I can take it much longer. I want to make a video and talk about some of the books I've read in quarantine and maybe make some helpful, maybe not helpful, but some potential suggestions. So I have a list right here of the books that I've read that I've taken notes for, see, very professional, and I'm going to go over them in the order that I actually read them. So the first book that I read, I have a list. Some I have physical copies for and some I don't. The first book that I read in quarantine was Red Rising by Pierce Brown, and if you don't know what this book is about, it is about, it's sci-fi and it's in the future on Mars, where there is a revolution against a evil regime. In this book, we don't necessarily get to like the revolution part yet, but our main character has disguised himself as a member of the highest class of society, and in this book, he's at like the elite school where all the gold, so basically the top people in society go for school, but really school is a rough term for what this book is about. He goes to school, but really it's more like the Hunger Games. It's pretty cool. I would give this book a 3.5 out of 5, I think, or like an 80%. I know mathematically it doesn't transfer exactly, but this is a book I picked up because a lot of my friends have read it and they loved it, so I was like, hey, I'll give it a go. But I think overall with this book, the plot was really interesting, the pacing's really fast, there's a lot of action, that was cool, but I had a couple of issues. The first being, none of the characters seem really all that fleshed out. We get to know our main character, who is Daryl. He's a good kid, I don't know. Daryl's cool, he's interesting, you know, we're fine with Daryl, but everybody else, and especially the supporting cast, we don't really spend that much time with the supporting characters of this novel, and so on that end, we don't really care about them when they get killed, which happened a lot. That's another issue. There's so much child murder at a school, and I'm just like, I get this is supposed to be a pretty like brutal world, but you know, I feel like we're getting a little bit desensitized towards this sort of murder, and it was a little bit disturbing to read about. Some kid just gets killed and then everybody's like, oh my god, that was sad. Okay, let's move on. Anyway, let's move on. I know this is a lot of people's one of their favorites, and I'm sorry I did not enjoy it as much because I don't really care about the characters, and when the plot isn't as interesting, it's really hard to follow along with what is happening and to really care about the story. So I don't know if I'm gonna finish the series. Then the second book that I read after Red Rising was this thing, the Da Vinci Code. You might be wondering, why is this size? Why is it so tiny? Why does it look like this? Well, the thing is, because I ordered it on Amazon a long time ago, because I heard a lot of people liked it, and I wanted to be like an intellectual like everybody else, but I didn't realize it was an edition that was a mass market paperback. And let me just tell you, that made my reading experience so much worse. Firstly, the book is tiny. You don't really know how to hold it. The words are tiny. And it doesn't fit with all my other books. Look at this. Look at this. Where am I supposed to put this? To give a quick synopsis about the Da Vinci Code, this is like a mystery solving something, one of those books, thriller, I guess, where we're racing through basically all of Europe to try to find the Christian truth. But yeah, that's what it is. There's a lot of secret societies, codes, ancient history, a lot of interesting stuff. You learn quite a lot reading this, and I thought that was really interesting. Probably my favorite thing about it. I would give it about like an 87%, I think. The plot is good. Some of the twists I thought were cool. I didn't see them coming. Robert Langdon is a pretty good male lead. He's smart, and then I like following him as he solves all these riddles and crimes. Sophie, the female lead, is my favorite. I love her so much. And I know that she's not in any of the other Dan Brown, Robert Langdon books, and I'm so sad. And there's like a new female lead for every single book. And that doesn't sit quite well with me, because it's almost like Bond, where like main character, this sort of older bachelor guy, is off on adventures with other brilliant, beautiful, smart, intelligent, you know, women, but I don't know, it seems a little bit, I don't quite fit well with that, and then he's like a new romance with every new female lead that we meet. The next three books that I want to talk about, I don't have physical copies for, so I will just put a graphic here somewhere. First, what I want to talk about is The Gentleman's Guide to Vice and Virtue, and I read this on audiobook, which is amazing. The narrator voice is great. There's not much to say about it. It's a YA romance, historical fiction, but it's got like fantasy / sci-fi elements into it, but it's not like a big part of the story. Overall, I liked it. I give it like, I don't know, like an 80%. It was cute. liked the supporting cast a lot. I had a few issues with the main character, but I tolerated him. It was okay. He was fine. There's not much to say about it. It was super cute. The other 2 books that I've read, but I don't have in physical copies, are Warcross and Wildcard by Marie Lu. And overall, I really enjoyed this series. It was a super fast read. I read both of them in like 3-4 days. The story is set in the near future where this video game called Warcross has basically taken over the world. And it's basically like an augmented reality / VR game that you put on these glasses to play. And it's very, very cool. Like, I really like the tech in this duology. Overall, we'd give this series like a 3.5 out of 5 altogether. The first book was definitely much stronger than the second. The main character, Mika, I think is how you say her name, Mika Chen, is fun to follow. I don't particularly love her, but she's cool. The futuristic future that we see in this duology is somewhat probable, I think, even though for me there was a couple of logical jumps that I didn't quite believe in, but overall it's a pretty cool world, pretty cool tech, and there's a lot of chemistry between our main character and our main love interest. I really liked seeing them together. They were great. But especially in the second book, there were a couple of plot issues that I was just like, okay, like things just happened and then I wasn't really following, and there was a lot of plot twists that didn't really make sense. There's the supporting characters are likable, and it's cool, so that was good too. It was a fun time. It was a fun time, you know, it was a fun time. This is when we should hit intermission, because this book that I'm about to talk about is, can you even read that? This is A Tale of Two Cities by Charles Dickens. And this book, I'm still not done. I'm like this much, I'm almost done. I'm like 80% of the way done. Everybody knows A Tale of Two Cities. Everybody knows Charles Dickens. This book took me a month, pretty much, just to get to this part that I'm at. I was like, what's a better time than quarantine to, you know, get smarter, read classical literature that everybody's raving about. And for those who have read the Shadowhunter Chronicles, especially the Infernal Devices, Will and Tessa love A Tale of Two Cities. So I was like, I want to be like Will and Tessa, let me read it. You know, literature isn't like your typical genre fiction YA novel, and so this is definitely a pretty slow read. I can't really get more than like a chapter or 2 into it at a time before I can't read anymore. This is also like a mass market paperback sort of. It's larger size, but this was like a super cheap print, so the words are super small, and because this was written like 300 years ago, nobody talks like this anymore. It's very hard to understand what he's saying. A lot of classic literature, it's more about, I think, the intricacies of human nature, and it's more the subtle things that count. There's not much of a plot. There's not much of a plot in this novel. We follow these characters for like a pretty long time span, and it takes place during the French Revolution, before and after. And the characters I think are all very interesting, like Lucy and Sydney in particular, who I really like, Sydney Carton. Something like A Tale of Two Cities should be read at least twice, I think. The first time you're just reading, just scanning it, inspecting it, see what it's about, but it really takes like a second reading for you to understand its meaning, and I think this is something that I'll come back to. Even though this isn't something that I'd be like, oh, I love to read this is so interesting, it's definitely something that is, you know, it's a slow burn, and I'm pretty intrigued by it. Like, overall, I have pretty fond feelings of it, and I really like this book. I really like how Charles Dickens uses metaphors in his writing, especially in this book, and this is definitely a book that I'll revisit later on. That's that. I don't want to rate it because people will yell at me. I'm uneducated and So after my month-long journey trying to get through A Tale of Two Cities, I then ordered online, because all the bookstores are closed, The Cruel Prince by Holly Black. So this book takes place in this fairy world that I think honestly is a little typical for a YA fantasy. But basically our main character and her 2 sisters were kidnapped into this fairy world when they were young kids after their parents were murdered, like in every other YA novel. Her and her twin sister are humans, but her older sister is a fairy, and it's because her mother used to be involved with a fairy dude that they were murdered and therefore taken to this fairy world. So basically in this book, our main character Jude is about 17, basically in this book fighting for her place in this world and to sort of find her own place and what she wants to do and to gain power basically in this world that she feels kind of powerless in. The plot in the first 2/3 was pretty slow. I think it was just them going to school, complaining about small things, them thinking about what they wanted to do. It wasn't the best, but I think the last third definitely makes up for it, which is why I think I would give this book about like a 4 out of 5, like 80% probably. While I think Jude, the main character Jude, and the main love interest, I think, right, Carden, aren't super well fleshed out characters yet in this book, their chemistry I think is quite strong. And then I usually don't ship characters all that hard in books. I am all for it. And then immediately after reading this book, I googled memes about the Cruel Prince. And I really like Jude and Carden together, so please, can they get married? I heard that they do. Please, now, soon, please, soon. That'd be cool. I'm definitely picking up the second book. I have it on hold at the library, on the ebook version. I have it on hold at the library, online library, and I'm so excited to get into it because I just really want to see what happens to Jude and Carden, and hopefully more of the politics side, which I heard what the second book is more about, which I'm excited to read about. Yeah, cool. A lot of the supporting characters aren't that interesting. They're pretty one-dimensional. Like the sisters, the parents. Actually, the stepmother is pretty cool. Oriana? I like her. She's pretty cool. Basically reading this book after reading something that is like super literary, like The Tale of Two Cities, I was like, oh my god, this is so easy to read. This is like cotton candy in book form, which is why I read it in like a day or two. But yeah, it was a good time, and I'm excited to finish this series. So this is a pretty good rec, I think, if you're in a reading slump and you want to like read something new and fast. This is it. Nation. Alrighty, and that takes us to the last book of this video wrap up. Is it a wrap up? I don't really know what counts as a wrap up. Anyway, I don't like the dust jacket. I mean, the dust jacket's nice, but I just don't have it. And I have Chain of Gold by Cassandra Clare. However you view Cassandra Clare and her work and, you know, the controversies and whatnot, for me, the Shadowhunter Chronicles is something that I've been reading ever since I was like 12, 13, and I almost like grew up reading these books. So reading something like Chain of Gold, while this isn't the, you know, most extraordinary, most exquisite thing I've ever read in my life, it almost feels like it's very comforting, and it's like going home. This is a lot of fun. My cat's there now. Okay, he can sit on my bed. Yeah, honestly, Chain of Gold, this series is worth picking up again. I know a lot of people love the Infernal Devices, and in this series we follow the children of those characters from the Infernal Devices. And for me, Cassandra Clare's writing and her sense of humor, you know, I really vibe with. I really like, and for me it's funny and I really enjoy it. So which is why I keep reading her books. For me, I think the Shadowhunter books have a pretty special place in my heart just because I grew up reading them. And for me, they're like, it's almost like a Harry Potter, but for like my teenage years. There's a lot to say about them, about all the Shadowhunter Chronicle books. Maybe I'll make a video talking about all of them another time. But basically what I'm trying to say is I'm really liking Chain of Gold, and I don't know why I'm stroking it, but this is a fun time and I'm excited to finish it, which I will go back to in a bit. And alright, that's it. That's all the books I have to talk about show right now. I think there were a couple of smaller things I've read. Like I was attempting to read Watchmen, which I'd gotten like a couple of years ago, the graphic novel, but I'm just not a graphic novel person. It's so hard to get through. I'm about like a third of the way there. I read V for Vendetta for school and I liked it well enough, but also just with any graphic novel, it takes a long time for me to read it. I will finish it. Alright, I'm done talking. That's all I have to say. If you have any thoughts, any questions, any comments, feel free to let us know. And yeah, okay, goodbye. Bye bros, bye. Okay, have a good day. And hopefully the world feels better in every sense of the world. And I hope tomorrow is always a better day than today. And that